Hi everyone, welcome to this month's Art Flow. Today I'm going to be sketching and painting a still life made from these pumpkins and the candle that I've set up in front of my windows. As you can see, the day that I filmed this was a very rainy, gray day, perfect for this pumpkin still life. I'm going to be using my new sketchbook, the same one that I painted in last time. And I'm going to start by sketching the still life. If you want to create and sketch an autumn-themed still life, here are a few tips. First of all, collect objects that are different sizes and shapes. Generally, a still life is more interesting when there are different levels to it. So you want something that's taller, something that's medium height, and something that's shorter. You also want to include different textures. I have 2 pumpkins in this still life, but I also have a couple of books and I have a candle. So I have the transparent material of the glass, the cloth bound books, and then I have the surface texture of the pumpkins with all of their sort of bumps and ripples. Always start by sketching in lightly. Try not to make any dark pencil lines right away because these can be hard to erase later on if you make any mistakes. Also, it's good to take your time when you're creating your sketch because you want to sort of look carefully as you go. Are things too tall? Are they too close to each other? Spend your time trying to check the proportions of things, and by proportions I mean how big are they in relationship to each other. If you are drawing 2 pumpkins that are different sizes, you want to make sure that the smaller pumpkin actually looks smaller on the page. This sounds kind of obvious, but I've seen a lot of beginning art students who just sort of start drawing and then they never really look back at the subject that they're sketching. It's important to spend time looking at your subject, studying it, before you go in with your pencil and your paint. Okay, so you can see I've created just a very simple sketch. I don't need to put in a lot of detail because I'm going to be adding any detail that I want with the paint. First of all, I'm going to mix some neutral colors that I'm going to use for the background. As you can see, I'm using a small flat brush to lay in the surface of the table. I probably could have used a bigger brush for this, but because I wanted to be careful to get in the corners around my subject, I decided to use this smaller brush. Now I'm mixing colors for the first pumpkin. You'll notice that I added a little bit of red to the orange that I'm using. When you're painting, you don't always need to buy tons and tons of colors. Often, if you buy a couple of colors, you can mix what you need from the colors that you already have. So if you want a red-orange, go ahead and mix some red into your orange. It is a lot of fun, though, to buy new paint and to try out new paint colors. For the first layer of watercolor, I'm just doing a very light wash over everything. I'm not worrying about details right now. I'm just sort of glazing in the color that I want, the big colors behind everything else. So the red of the books, the brown of the table, the orange of the pumpkins. If you want to try painting glass or something else transparent, again, look carefully at your subject. You can usually see the colors of the object behind the glass peeking through, especially if your glass is just clear and it doesn't have another color like blue or green. As you can see with this little candle jar, some of the red of the books is peeking through the top, and some of the brown of the little cork mat that it was on is also peeking through. Now I'm adding the shadow from the books, just to give everything a little bit more depth. One more thing about glass and painting glows, such as from a candle flame. With traditional watercolor, you don't really have a white paint. Any white that you want to have in your painting is usually the white of the paper. So I didn't actually paint the white highlights on the glass or the white of the candle flame. I just left those areas unpainted. That's traditional watercolor. If you want to add a little bit of white ink or white paint on top of that, that's totally fine. Watercolor is also nice too. Sometimes if you add in a color and decide you want to make it a little bit lighter later, you can take some clean water on your brush and scrub it over the surface and sort of pick up the color underneath. It doesn't always work perfectly, and sometimes there will still be a little bit of colors showing through, but you should still be able to lighten it. That's what I did with the surface of the small pumpkin. If you look at the highlight on the top, that was where I lifted up some of the paint with some clean water. Now I'm adding texture to the pumpkins, and I'm adding a shadow on the book to make everything look more vivid and three-dimensional. You'll notice that I'm building up the darker, more vibrant colors in layers, especially the bindings of the books. I'm going over them several times until I have them the vivid red that I want. I recommend doing that with very dark, vivid colors. It's easier, again, if you make a mistake to lift up lighter paint with some clean water than it is to lift up dark paint. I'm also working light to dark, so I started with the lightest colors and I'm working my way to the darker colors. That's generally what I prefer to do in watercolors, just because I like to work in layers. I start with the lighter colors, like the highlights on the pumpkins and on the candle jar, and then I work towards the darker colors, like the pumpkin stem, the shadows on the pumpkin, the shadows on the books. And I'm just about done with this little still life. I hope you tune in for next month's art flow for a November themed project. And I hope this inspires you to go out and create your own autumn themed still life and paint it in watercolor. And here's the final result. Thank you for watching.